Hello and welcome to the Rural Well. We are Bridget and Lauren, and we are thrilled to have you with us. Today, we want to talk about some of those hard things, communication between husband and wives, but also those moments where tragedy strikes. So whether you're joining us while you are raking out those flower beds, sweeping the shop, or hauling seed to the field, which I hope you are, we wanted you to know that we had the well-being of rural areas like yours in mind when we were building this episode. We know the ag industry has its challenges, but we are right alongside you and cannot wait to connect one generation and legacy to the next. Lauren, it is spring, it is lambing, it is planting. This feels like a great time to get people's attention because you probably have time to listen while their hands are busy. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we were in full on spring. It was so exciting. It was lovely. And it's been a really slow kind of maturation for the buds to start coming out on the tree. But last night felt like -9, snow, heavy frost hit. And so I'm just kind of crossing my fingers. I hope not too much damage happened. I'm pretty sure the water lines are frozen in the barn again. But I think it's a bit of an analogy for life, right? Like there's sometimes where it feels like we're sailing along and things are peachy keen. And then suddenly something changes and we're like, okay, whoa, A, we didn't really sign up for this. B, we wouldn't wish this on anybody, but the beauty of it is that the beauty can come from ashes. Beauty can come from hard things. And our guest today, Kate, is a testimony of that. She's developed an incredible business where she teaches folks about communication, both on the farm and off the farm. And Kate has a real personal story as well that goes along with this. So without further ado, welcome, Kate.
Hi. This is such a great podcast. I love listening to it, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, we're excited to have you. We're going to pass it over to you, Bridget.
Well, Kate and I started to visit one day and then realized how many interconnections we have of people in our lives. And so, Kate, so everybody else can be part of our inner circle, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Kate. I live in Fargo, and I'm here to share a story. This is sort of the story of my own marriage and our family, and a crisis that hit us, and how we got through it. As Lauren mentioned, there's tragedy here. My husband passed away, but there's also a lot of beauty in the story as well. And so, stories.
Your husband's from North Dakota.
Yes.
You're from Wisconsin, if I remember right.
I'm from Wisconsin. Yep.
How'd you guys meet and how'd you get over here and then kind of connected to all sorts of farm families?
Yeah. So I am from North Dakota stock, from Bismarck folks. My parents met and married in Bismarck. And then they raised me and my sister in Wisconsin. And, but spent a lot of time in North Dakota growing up. I met and married my Northwood husband, when he, over in Wisconsin. We met and married there. And then, my parents boomeranged back to North Dakota. Our family was all here. And so we took the first opportunity to also move, to North Dakota, and I'm so glad that we did. And he's from a Northwood farm family. And there's a lot of ag people in my life, but I'll say I have a little bit of imposter syndrome because I have not myself been part of ag. So,
you live in North Dakota just by default. We're all part of ag. It's okay. Small states, less than 1 million people in the whole place.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So for you, Kate, you have a background in communications, and you're used to seeing the way people carry themselves, what they say, what they do. But you also could see some signs in your husband through his communication that maybe he was struggling. As a wife, how did you approach that with him? And because from my experience with you, he struggled with his mental health, and as a wife, that is hard to sit your husband really down and say, how can I help and be taken seriously?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you first about how much that didn't work, right? So early on, we were both communication geeks, right? That's how we connected. That's why, probably part of why we got married. And like for the first almost decade of our marriage, because we'd read all the books and we talked about talking and yes, we were such geeks, and so we would have conversations about conversations, and we were on easy street, and it all seemed to work. And so he's also a 2-tour veteran, Iraq and Afghanistan, and that hit him not until almost a decade after he got out of the Army, but it hit him hard, and so he dealt with something called psychosis, where his brain was playing all kinds of tricks on him, and it's like we could hardly talk anymore. It was so strange. I couldn't even recognize the words that were coming out of his mouth. It was like coming out of a stranger's mouth, but it was his voice and his, still him, but not him. I didn't like what I was saying either. I wasn't proud of what I was saying. And here we were, like, we thought we had it all sorted out. We had this great communication, this great marriage, and all of a sudden, it was hard making ordinary decisions, like buying a coffee table. Came with like 3 rounds of intense fighting where we didn't used to fight. We had this huge decision to make about whether to move. And I mean, that felt like paralysis. Like, how could we possibly make that decision right now? We can't even choose a coffee table.
I'm curious, Kate, when I hear these stories, I think, oh, I've heard this type of story before. Was there a shared experience? Like, was there other people that had served at the same time that you found out about? Or because our military folks do experience not only PTSD, but a form of PTSD can be like a psychosis. We often hear postpartum psychosis, right? Like where after a woman has had a baby that they can experience a psychosis. But we also do hear of that as well within our veteran population. We certainly know PTSD and a psychosis that's from that PTSD. It does happen. Was there a shared experience at all, or did you feel really isolated in that?
It felt like it was coming out of it left field. And I wish I had noticed earlier signs where he was just not himself, little in bits and spurts years before, but I didn't. And so it wasn't until after he got sick and he was in psychosis and things didn't make any sense anymore, someone else is walking around in his skin. That's when I got connected and realized just how common this is. And yeah, which is scary too. Like, I was hoping this was a weird thing, but it's so common.
So I want to put one statistic in there for that. And I know Lauren has another question. When we look at like the U.S. military, 40% of our U.S. military comes from rural places, rural farms. I mean, we have a big percentage, and I think it's the same Canadian-wise as well. So when, like what you said, there's more folks out there than you anticipate, and they don't always take that shared experience and rely on each other for help and so forth. And
one of the ways that we talk about, mental health is we really talk about it from a risk factor perspective. Part of I guess for me, is when I see people who say, oh, I missed the signs. And Kate, I said, I wished I had seen that earlier. I just want people to know, like, there aren't these clear cut signs. Oh, well, if he ticks box A, B, and C, then this will happen. Oh, but if it's just A and B, we're fine, right? But he had risk factors, and there was probably risk factors before which he was able to cope and manage and kind of hide, like we all do, right? We've all got a little bit of an ability to kind of be our best selves. And but what we find is in rural communities, there's risk factors, and then they serve in the military. And we think coming home to the farm will kind of make things right, or coming back home to that community will make things right. But there's actually a lack of services in our rural communities compared to our urban communities. Now, certainly we still want people to come home. I'm not saying that, but I'm always curious about how we can mitigate those risk factors. Right. And I think, Kate, that's part of what you do now.
It is, yes. And part of what we can talk about today. Right. Talk through some of those ways that we can mitigate risk factors. I want to understanding that there's limits to what we can do, right? There's
absolutely.
Limits.
Yeah.
I think my question kind of gets us to that, Kate. All right. So what signs were you seeing? And as a communicator, what tactics, looking back, what tactics would you change? Because I know that there are people listening who are like, look, I have someone in this situation. Where do I begin with them?
The biggest sign was that his priorities changed. Mm-hmm. So he was extremely focused on family, and so not just very much on our boys and me, but also on our extended family, spending time with loved ones, loved being around people, and loved the people around him, and also was an entrepreneur and really excited about starting his new business. And so he would, as is very common, there's episodes in psychosis and in a lot of mental illnesses. So psychosis is not an illness in itself. It's a symptom. And it can come out of a lot of things. So when he was entering a psychosis episode, his priorities would shift. So he would he would stop talking so much about what we're going to do next weekend, what the kids need, going to soccer practice, and get hyper-focused on a threat that he perceived. He was extremely worried about our family being hurt, extremely worried about being killed. And these were threats that none of the rest of us could perceive. It was only he who could see the threat. And everything else needed to be pushed aside in order to deal with the threats. Mm-hmm. And so his business all of a sudden didn't matter to him anymore. Soccer practice, we're not taking him because we have to deal with this. And can you take a day off work because we need to deal with this, and etc. So his priorities shifting was a huge flag.
Was there anything, and I am talking from a place of complete naivety, so I'm going to ask some pretty big elementary questions. There was no talking him out of that hyper-focus at that point. When he came out of the psychosis, was he more reasonable to talk with? And did he then say, okay, you're right, that was probably going too far? Would it almost return to his normal behavior and then the episodes would start again?
Yes and no. So it depended. Okay. He definitely came into periods where he was clearer. And those were so important. Those were precious. They were gold to us. And when I say us, I mean not just me, but his parents became my teammates. His brother, other members of our family, my parents came together and became a team to support and to get him through this crisis and to weather the storm. And so. Yeah, and for us, those times were so precious because that's when he's clear enough that we can have conversations about What's the medication that you're on? I think we need to get you a new therapist. I think we need to get you into your psychiatrist because you did go through an episode. And so whatever dose you're on is not helping. Or sometimes for various reasons, he would go off of his medications. And that's a challenge too, because on the one hand, it is so hard. They're very hard. It can feel like hell to be on these medications, especially during the early months. And then it does get easier, but that initial period is really hard. On top of that, he was always so worried that the medications were dulling his ability to see the threat that was threatening his family. And so he had this inner voice at all times saying, Matt, if you take this medication, you're not going to see the threat, and the threat is going to come after you all. And you have to be a man, and you can't dull your ability to protect your family. And so he would often go off of the medication, and then he would end up in an episode. But the more he was on the medications, the more clear-minded he was, and the more we could have conversations. And those times were so important. We even got to the point when he was clear-minded where we could talk about the conversations we had when he was in psychosis, which were sometimes blacked out, like he could barely remember.
Right.
So what you're describing is actually, it's like a form of disassociation, just so people know. When a person is going through psychosis, it's like it is a different person. And they often don't remember what that experience was. They don't remember what happened. Most often they don't. And it can make it very, very difficult to even do reconciliation because it's like you're painting a picture and we're like, oh no, it couldn't have been me, right? Like, I couldn't have done that.
I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I would never say that. And so I apologize for laughing, but I'm just thinking of, I have a loved one who, one of our foster kids who would go through disassociation, and it was like this completely other person, and afterward to begin that reconciliation process is, of course, for me, I'm hurt. And so I want to heal it. But for that individual, there's no recollection. There's no emotional tie to the experience. They typically feel badly, but not for their actions, but that they see somebody else is hurting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, so along those lines, like you talk about disassociation and, we're talking about it's like a separate person. And so one of the things that, when we talked about accountability in those clear times, one of the things that we would talk about is, your illness is not you. And I understand that things happened while you were in an episode that you can't remember, that you would never have done. At the same time, those things happened. And I understand it was the illness that did that. And your responsibility is to control the illness to the best of your ability.
That's right.
You are not the illness. The illness is not you. But you're responsible to do everything in your power. That means attending all of your appointments. That means staying on your medication or being really proactive about switching if it's just not working. That means sticking with the therapist. That means, we're all going to therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you did there was a question that I had for you, Kate, and that is, as a family, for you and your sons, were you in family counseling together with Matt? Have you continued after the fact? Is there like a survivors group that you're a part of? Because for those who have been dealing with these types of situations, I think they want to know that there is help out there for them if needed.
Yes. So one of the special things is that my husband found the therapist, they call it a play therapist for the boys, and got that established. And we went in with them for some early sessions. And she has been just so, there's no words, I'll get emotional even talking about it. They're so special and so important because she has helped them through the trauma of dealing with mental illness and a parent. When my husband passed, she was there to help them get through this and figure out how to carry the burden of grief, which is really hard. They were 10 and 6 when he died. We've been wrapped in love by our church community. That's been just huge for us, and by family and friends, and and all of that. And of course, I've got a therapist too. And it takes a village to get through these things.
Absolutely.
And you get so well bonded with your village, right? Like it feels like gorilla glue, the bonds that we have, and the family that I feel with these amazing people because we got through this together.
So I have 2 questions for you. And Lauren, you got to tell me if I'm interrupting in the wrong spots here, if you have some too. The first one I want to ask is, do you feel that through all of this, your boys are very open and willing to talk with you so that if they see signs in themselves or their friends, they are willing to say, I think this person or myself needs help, and they recognize it? And then after that question, I'd like to talk about how this honed your business skills, helping you teach others to communicate better.
Great. Oh, the boys. So I don't know if they are in a place where they would say it to me, but I know that their journey has shaped the friends that they are to their friends. And I've seen them come alongside of their friends in ways that are like, wow, that's amazing. And I see them borrowing the modeling that they've had when people come alongside them. And, going alongside of a friend who's going through a hard time. And I'll keep it generic. But, I remember one of my sons just sitting with him, and they'd play video games. And then, it would come up and they just kind of sit with it together. And, my son would sit with him through the hard thing, and then they'd go back to playing their game. And then it would come out a little bit and they talk about it a little more, and then they were done. And it was just beautiful. I'm like, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. That's actually a really high skill.
Yeah.
For people to be able just to sit in the pain with one another. Mm-hmm. We don't do it very often in our culture. We tend to be like, okay, wrap it up in a bow and tuck it away. Or when we go through pain, it tends to, I'm thinking of an individual that I know whose a spouse died by suicide not very long ago. And she said, I just thought my village would be here a little bit longer for me. Like that kind of that piece, but certainly just sitting with it is a good place to be.
Wow. So Kate, that second part of that question is, as you look at your business, I would venture a guess that as you teach others to communicate more clearly, to make those big decisions together, you've taken a lot from this, your education, but also the learned experiences with your husband. Are there a couple of points that people need to think through and use when it comes to making big decisions and critically thinking? Are there some advice points that you always make sure to give in your business to others?
Oh, for sure. And a lot of this came from, this is my husband's legacy as well, I guess I want to say. Because we worked together during those times of clarity about okay, those normal ways that all of the books and all of the podcasts tell you how to communicate so that everything goes fine, that didn't work. Like, it felt like the ground fell out from under us. It didn't work. And so what now? And we tried a bunch more things, and we did a whole lot of research. We were both reading books and then talking, we'll try this one next time. And so we made a lot of progress, and it wasn't just us, it was our family who came in and tried these things with us. And so we did find ways that we could maximize the quality of be able to buy the coffee table, be able to decide that we were going to move to Fargo, be able to decide that, make sure that the kids get to go to soccer practice, and actually feel connected to each other. So my husband was such a wonderful man, and I missed him when he was in psychosis. And I was always so happy to be with him when we had that time. And it was so precious, and we got more of it. I know we did. And so those are things that I'm really excited to share with other people. I like to start with, far upstream. Like, we have a metaphor of like upstream risk management, or or plant, but it sounds scary, but like, it's just in your life, if there are times when things feel good, and like, if you imagine you're on a river, like the river is calm, but you can feel that the current is strong, like, where might that current be going? And, could there be dangers ahead? Could there be rapids? If you're feeling that and things are going well, it doesn't take that long to sort of think through, is there, maybe you're looking forward to a new baby arriving. And that's a wonderful thing. But at the same time, you're the husband, and your wife is expecting, and this is your second kid. And with the first pregnancy, after their first child was born, she dealt with postpartum for months, and so now, while things are still calm, is a great time to make sure she has the supports she needs. Mm-hmm. And it's, those things don't take too long to line up, usually when you are doing them in advance. And man, is that going to be a better experience if she already has things set up in case she needs them. Does she have, just put some therapy appointments on the calendar if she needs them. Make sure that she, whatever other supports she needs, make sure family knows so that they can come and help. Those sorts of things are so valuable and so doable.
So what I hear you saying is, if you think about your life like a river, and you hit those placid moments where the water's calm, there's very few ripples, take that time to be thinking ahead and have the bigger discussions before you hit the rough spots and the turbulent water. And it's not so easy to talk then.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. You can't even buy a coffee table. Yeah.
I get that. And I think so many times, many of our big decisions are money-based, right?
Yes.
So when you're flush, get some of that planning done. When everybody is healthy, talk about what happens if they're not. But just take advantage of the calm and the good times as much as you can is probably what I think I want to take from your discussion today, Kate.
Yeah. And I think part of it, like, to name an elephant in the room, those are conversations that are hard to have, especially if you have to name something that you don't want to talk about. We don't like talking about depression. I love that recent episode with Jerry, the recovering farmer, where he's talking about how important it is to just name these things and talk about the struggle and say, well, how is alcohol going for you? It's so important to talk about it, because so many people are struggling with these things. And it's amazing once you get that conversation going, like, okay, this isn't as hard to talk about as we thought it would be. You can also ask permission. This is one of my favorite communication tricks, and it's so simple. If you want to say something hard, just ask them, is it all right? There's something difficult I want to say, and it could be wrong. But, after our last child, our lovely daughter arrived, you dealt with some postpartum depression. And now with this new pregnancy, I want to make sure you're supported. So, ask permission.
Yeah. Yeah. And how can we do that together? I liked what you said earlier that, the problem isn't the person, the problem's the problem. And you and I team up together to tackle the problem. And so oftentimes in communication, we get really defensive. And what we really want to do is figure out the way to team up with one another and say, like, we're in it together against this, whatever this is, we're going to team up together to do that. So I love that, Kate. Thanks for that insight.
I heard Kate quote one of our last podcasts with Jerry, the recovering farmer. You have a good podcast fan with you when they know the other people who have been on the podcast. And so that tells me that Kate knows that the next thing we're going to do is we've got a quote from Lauren that we get to dissect for ourselves.
Well, and I think this quote, I don't think it's going to create a big arc. I think we'll probably all be like, yeah, rah, rah, rah. The first quote I had. So I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I hope that's okay. The second one is from Simon Sinek. And he says, leadership is a way of thinking, a way of acting, and most importantly, a way of communicating. And the reason for that is because so often farmers are leaders in their community, they're leaders in their enterprises, and we're leaders in our families, but we don't recognize the leadership that we bring. And so I'm just going to lay it down there. Actually, you're all leaders. If you're listening to the podcast, you're a leader. So let's tackle it like that. Would you agree that real leadership, because Simon says, most importantly, it's your way in which you communicate. That is indicative of how you lead well. So leadership is a way of thinking, a way of acting, and most importantly, a way of communicating. What are your thoughts?
So first of all, I love Simon's quotes. I've read a lot of his business books, and the guy is great.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a valid information. I think what I heard you saying about real leadership is communication. Think about those who consider themselves leaders. Dictators think they do, but it's all top down and forcible. It's not a conversation. It's not weighing the pros and cons at any point in time. Versus the leaders that we respect the most. And it might be someone as simple as the lady who leads your church choir, but she brings in information from everybody else, looks for consensus. Not every leader is going to be popular. I mean, if you're a manager at a business and you make everybody happy all the time, it's probably not good for your business. You probably need to shake things up once in a while. So maybe I'm leaning towards your situation dictates your leadership and communication.
I think this quote actually resonates with me quite a bit, because we can have the best thoughts and we can have the best intentions or best actions, but if we can't communicate them, those get stalemated, right? Like if I have a great vision for my team or for my family or for whatever, but I can't communicate that vision, nobody can really get on board with me. Right? Like if we can't share that vision, I think about you, Kate, like in your own business practices or in your own family, how have you had to kind of create a different vision for your family or an augmented one or a different one and in some way? And if you can't communicate that, do we kind of flounder instead of running towards whatever this goal is together? I mean, I'm curious. I don't know if I could be way off base, but I just think that communication is one of these pillars to be able to unite with other people towards a goal.
Yeah. Well, Lauren, you said that use the phrase shared vision, right? And that's such a huge such a huge thing. And oh gosh, I mean, if you don't have a shared vision, then it's like the water lines to the barn are frozen, right? Like you can't, you just can't hardly, until that's solved, you kind of are stuck. And so that was always a stop everything. And as Bridget mentioned, it's often about finding, like, bringing the people together, building consensus, and you can't do that until the water lines are flowing. And that means you can't do that until you have a shared vision.
Right.
And so we had a lot of conversations, and I don't just mean my husband and I, but definitely we did all the time. We had to almost hit the reset button again every time he would come out of an episode, and I'm reestablishing that, yes, this is the normal him, and his priorities are the family and the business and getting to church, and hallelujah, this is nice. Yeah. And we just had to have a very quick, it was usually so quick, but just like reestablishing these are our common goals. This is what we want. And that was such a great moment too. Like, okay, here we are. Here I am with my husband again. This is great. Let's move forward. And also with our extended family, because we were a team together, having those conversations, just reminding ourselves a little bit that, okay, our common goal is to make sure that he is well. And so I trust you. It sounds like you're making decisions about, which providers we're going to talk to and what does treatment look like in the coming days. And I trust you because we have a common goal. And and I have to let you carry that because this is too much for, like, we have to share the burden.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to bring up something that I think is a little bit fun. I don't think it has to be an obvious answer when I ask this question, but I think that it will all make us probably think a little bit deeply today and smile a little bit. So I want you to look around your house. We're all at home from our offices today. If there was a invention that you could take from the modern era via time machine back to the year 1850, what would you take back?
Oh, the dishwasher, the washing machine. Like you're saying, I want to bring something from 1850 to today?
Oh, I want to take something from today back to 1850.
Oh, yeah.
And you're exactly right. I have thought about, like, as a kid growing up, when I was in my teens, I still had 3 of my great-grandparents alive.
Yeah.
And even to now, for them to see the changes, like, none of them had dishwashers in their houses, but when I walk through my house and I hear my dishwasher humming, my oven is going, my washer and dryer are tumbling, imagine what my great-grandmothers would think.
Yeah. That and a rototiller, right? Like, I mean, you only need it once or twice a year, but baby, that thing is worth its mint. Like, it's so important.
Yep.
But not my cell phone, not my computers.
Oh.
I definitely would not render those to be worthy.
I would take my washing machine back because if you think how much work it was to do laundry,
gosh,
hauling in well water, heating it up, using washboard, wringing your
right?
hand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would want to take my washing machine and a lot of soap.
Yeah.
Gonna need a team of mules to power it, but still.
I get to see Bridget would have it all set up with these, like, the donkeys. Like, some people use it for a grist mill. Bridget uses it for her laundry. That's how, because she doesn't have a laundry machine.
You guys, it's going to be worth it. Just watch. Just watch.
Right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So what would you take back?
Oh, man.
Loren's taken a tiller, which I agree. If some of that hard prairie ground we live on, that would have been a blessing.
That would be great. Man, it is so hard to choose. I mean, I'll say my car. I don't know what I would do without it. I think that would be incredibly impressive. Of course, no one would leave you alone.
Yeah. We'd all be hitching a ride with you, Kate. We'd all be like,
people piled up.
I do not have time to hook up that Bessie today, so I need to call Kate.
Yes.
First Uber contract is Kate.
I remember one time we were visiting in Lancaster County in Pennsylvania. I don't know if either of you have ever been down there, but it's home to a great deal of Mennonite and Amish folk. And I do love the culture. Of course, I could never fit in the culture because I'd have to wear a dress, and that is a deal breaker for me. Most other things I think I could have lived with, but anyway, we hired a fella to take us for a ride in one of the buggies, and it was pretty sweet. It was a nice memory for sure. Yeah.
So, Kate, after today, you may have folks that want to reach out, whether it's because they want to talk about you and your communications business. They may want to ask questions about all the things that you have been through and part of our discussion today. How would you like them to do that?
Well, I have a website, which is solidsignalcommunication.com. I think we can put that in show notes. Yep. Or you can email me at kate@solidsignalcommunication.com.
Wonderful.
Ladies, it's been a pleasure to talk today and learn so much. I have a whole page full of notes. So thank you both today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Until we see you again, folks.